Hello everybody and welcome back to Brian's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail, and today we are going to be discussing the disappearance of Michael Larry Madden, who disappeared back in August of 1996 from the Sonora, California area. Michael was 20 years old at the time. He was born in 1976, so he'd be a lot older now, obviously. He's about 6'1", 195 pounds. He was thought to be wearing a t-shirt, shorts, a San Francisco Giants hat, and possibly a watch. He's got brown hair, hazel eyes, and he had about a 3-inch surgical scar on the left side of his collarbone, and he went by the nickname of Mike, which is important later on in the story. Michael was a student of the Humboldt State University at the time of his disappearance, and he was actually studying forestry, so he really loved the outdoors. He was an experienced outdoorsman. He loved to fish, and this is where the whole situation got started. He was going out on a camping fishing trip. Michael had planned to meet his friends at the Sandbar Flat campground near Sonora, California on August 10th, 1996 for some camping and fishing and hanging out. He left his family residence at around 5 a.m. in the morning, and he left a note for his mother, explaining his plans and saying when he'd be back. He did bring a dog along with him on this trip. The dog's name was Matilda, along with his camping and fishing gear. So this campground that he was going to is nestled in between these two mountain ridges and on a nice little stream which had great fishing. Sort of if you're familiar with the Tulamini area of California, but in that Sierra Mountain area. It's a very beautiful spot. Apparently he had been there many times, so he was very familiar with the area. He had grown up going fishing there with his dad. They had taken several fishing trips there. This was apparently a great spot, and he knew the spot well. So this was not an area that he was unfamiliar with. So it wouldn't be a place where he would get lost or anything like that. And he was a very keen outdoorsman. He was an aspiring forest ranger. So he was a very well outfitted guy, and he had arranged to meet his friends after this camping trip in the wilderness at the Sandbar Flat campground I'm not going to say this right, Stanislaus River in Sonora, California. And the Stanislaus Forest is southeast of the city of Sacramento. According to his father, before he died, unfortunately both of his parents have passed, but before they did, his father said that Michael, ever since he was a kid, he just loved the outdoors. He loved being in nature. It just made him happy, whether he was fishing or camping, and even just being down by the water or the rivers. So this was just something that he was meant to do, and he was pursuing this career in forestry. So we can't know for sure what happened this evening, but he went up there to camp and fish. So it's assumed that he was, set up his camp, went fishing, and then once the sun went down, he probably went to bed. And here's where the story sort of takes a turn, and unfortunately in a bad way. Now, they didn't have a set plan. His friends didn't have an exact time that they said that they were going to come up and meet him. But according to his friends and the police reports, his friends didn't actually arrive at this Sandbar Flat campground until 2 a.m. on August 12th. So it was very late in the evening, and when they got there, they said that it was weird because there was a freshly made campfire, but there was no sign of Michael or his dog Matilda. His campsite was set up. You could tell that, it had been properly set up. His Chevrolet Cavalier was right next to that, and then just the campfire. So they were just kind of looking around and thinking, okay, well, this is very odd. What's going on here? And according to his friends, his gear was all there, placed neatly around the freshly made campfire. And then all of a sudden, this man who identified himself as Joseph Tyne appeared out of nowhere, basically. And he was carrying a .45 automatic pistol. And he asked the friends, he said, "You guys looking for Mikey?" Now, Michael had never gone by the nickname Mikey. He was known by Mike. So they automatically knew something was off. And his friends told the authorities, and it's in their police report, that this guy, while he was sitting there talking with him, was just repeatedly cocking his pistol which this went over for like 6 hours. So just imagine how bizarre it is. You go to meet your friend, you show up there, you look around, and then all of a sudden this guy comes out of the woods saying, hey, you guys looking for Mikey? And then for the next 6 hours, while you wait for Mike and Matilda the dog to show up, this guy is just sitting there cocking his pistol the whole time, not really saying anything. Not only that, they noticed that looking at him, it looked like he was wearing Mike's boots. Again, this fact hasn't been corroborated, but the friends stuck to that and said that it looked like he was wearing Mike's boots. And of course, so the friends waited there till morning with this creepy guy because they didn't know what was going on and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what had happened. The whole thing was just so bizarre. So they waited around for a little bit longer and then, of course, checked in with his parents to see if, maybe he had gone home, anything like that. The parents didn't know where he was. They reported him missing. And of course, once they reported him missing, the search and rescue teams came in and they really did scour the area. They brought in dive teams and they were out there for, several weeks. Now, after 4 days, the dog, Matilda, did return to the campsite. And she was, hungry and dehydrated, but she wasn't able to lead the rescuers, back to Michael or where he was. She was just kind of whining. And actually, sometimes when a dog behaves that way, it could indicate that something really bad happened to the owner, because usually the dog will try and lead the people back to help the master wherever they are. But, who knows in this situation. But that had really raised their hopes in this case because they thought, okay, well, the dog came back. Maybe we have a chance at finding Mike. So the search went on for another couple of weeks. But unfortunately, they just never found anything. No clues. His parents obviously were highly involved. His father was just, devastated by this. And neither of them could, let it go. Even when his mother had passed, on her grave, it in the obituary, it still stated, 20 years later that Michael was still alive. It wasn't until the father passed that he actually accepted that he had most likely passed. The only other evidence that I came across that I thought was worth noting was Michael's half-brother, Randy Powell, said that in police reports, statements included from witnesses told authorities Michael had actually been in a cabin in Pinecrest, not at Sandbar Flat, the day he disappeared, which I found interesting, but again, it just kind of adds to the mystery. In my opinion, this guy who showed up with the gun, Joseph Tyne, is the most likely suspect. But we're going to talk about some of the theories here. The first and most obvious to me is this guy, Joseph Tyne. I mean, how bizarre and just coincidental is it that you show up to the campsite that you're supposed to meet your friend at? You're waiting there, and all of a sudden this guy comes out of the woods and says, hey, you looking for Mikey? He just happens to know the name of the guy that you are looking for, but he calls him by the wrong name, the wrong, nickname. And then while you're waiting, this guy just stands around cocking his gun and is wearing your friend's boots. I mean, to me, it's just plain and simple. As far as, at least this guy having some involvement or having more knowledge than he's letting on. Was this guy Joseph Tyne? So 9 months later, the police finally gave him a polygraph, and of course those results are unknown or unreleased to the public, but they never filed charges on him. There's been no charges filed in this case on anybody. So I'm not sure really what happened there. I understand that you need evidence, but it's just so frustrating when you have something like that, which to me looks so obvious. And okay, it could just be an incredible coincidence, but I just find it incredibly hard to believe that this guy would be wearing his boots and he wouldn't talk to the friends, try and help them out, just sit there being creepy and cocking his gun. And apparently he just had this very, very odd, creepy demeanor about him. So that's my number one theory. At least that's what I think happened. I think this guy, Joseph Tyne, at least knows more about what happened. It could have been an accident. Who knows? The area is mountainous and it does have a stream running through there, but Michael was a very experienced outdoorsman. He had been there before and he knew the area. So a theory of getting lost or something like that, even if he had suffered an injury, it's most likely they would have found him. And from reading the police reports and going over the documents, it's just incredibly hard for me to believe that this guy, Joseph Tyne, didn't have some kind of involvement, whether it was, he just came up to Michael while he was at his campsite and, said, "Can I have a beer?" And something went haywire and they got in a fight. Who knows? But I know that he knows more than he's letting on, or at least I have a very strong suspicion. And I'm not alone in that thinking. The investigators that were working this case also believe that Madden met with foul play at the Sandbar Flat, possibly at the hands of this guy. And the other theory is that there was a convicted serial killer named Cary Stayner who was convicted of murder in the Yosemite area in the late 90s. And this is one of the theories, that he might have had something to do or hand in it, but I kind of find this to be a stretch. But it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. I mean, he was active in the area, and this case is very mysterious in ways. But I just kind of find that, that old rule, Occam's razor, the simplest or most direct answer is usually the right one. And when you have a guy that shows up in the area who knows the name of the person that's missing, is wearing some of his gear, standing there with a pistol, I mean, it's like, how much more sort of direction to follow in this case do you need, really? But unfortunately, since that day, no one has heard or seen from Michael, and this is just one of those cases that is just, of course, just so sad. And here a guy goes out and just doing what he loves and supposed to meet up with a bunch of his friends, and one minute he's there, the next he's gone. And what's worse is, like I mentioned earlier in the video, both of his parents died not knowing what happened to Michael. His mother died in 2004 and his father died in 2008. And Madden was actually listed as a survivor on his mother's obituary, like I said. It wasn't until the obituary of his dad's that it said his son preceded him, which is just so sad. And unfortunately, to this very day, this case remains unsolved. It's still an open case. The Tulamini County Sheriff's Office is the investigating agency. So if you happen to have any information or know anything about this case, the number to call is 209-533-5822. And again, it's regarding the Michael Larry Madden, who disappeared on August 10th, 1996. Which is just crazy when you think about the time that has gone by and nothing was ever found, or he was obviously never found. I guess there was, one other possible theory would be animal predation, but, I hesitate to mention that just because generally in those scenarios when there is animal predation, there's evidence of it. There's footprints, there's hair, there's blood, there's all kinds of things around to make it evident that there was an animal attack there. Unfortunately, due to the age of this case, there was very limited information available, and it's not this type of case I would normally cover, but it just something stuck with me when I read about this. I came across it, and this is something that could have happened to any of us. And here's a guy that was looking to dedicate himself to the Forestry Service and to help people like us, who love the outdoors and hiking and going out and enjoying time in the wilderness. And whatever happened to him is just awful, whatever it was. So of course I want to dedicate this video to Michael Larry Madden, and in just hopes that one day his case will be solved and we can figure out what actually happened to him, and hopefully the appropriate people will be brought to justice. But again, so much time has passed, they might have passed as well. In any event, wishing everybody health and safety, and thanks again for watching. See you next time. Take care.